Saludos and salutations, Broncos Country, and welcome back into another exciting episode of Broncos Talk. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got a doozy for you today. Today marks the official return of the Ask a Fan section of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you how excited I've been all day to talk about this. I know it's been a while since we left off. We've talked to so many great people in the past when we brought this segment originally, and thank you to all of you guys who made it a big success. So Libre and I are very happy to bring it back to you, and today is the Bears edition of Ask a Fan segment. Also, Libre and I are going to get down to all the good stuff that happened for the Broncos in the draft. What grade? Who did we get? How is it going to help us improve? And also just to kind of pick the brain of a Bears fan on their picks and to kind of give us an idea of what they think about our team and vice versa. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, the overtime section of the show, one of my favorite parts of this show. I can't begin to tell you guys how excited I am. It is going to be great. So make sure your beer is cold, your food is warm. You don't want to miss a second of the show because it is time, and here we go.
Broncos Talk, let's rock, feel the energy rise. From the microphone to the fans reaching the skies. Every episode a thrill and surprise. For the love of the game, we harmonize.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Adan Diaz, and joining me to my left or my right, depending on which direction you are watching us, is my co-host, Bronco Libre. Libre, how you doing tonight, my brother?
What's happening? I am so excited for what has happened so far in this last week and whatnot. Let's get into this. Let's go, man. Let's go.
Wholeheartedly agree. And as I said at the beginning of the show, ladies and gentlemen, we have our special guest that is currently backstage, and he will be with us shortly to talk about the draft as well from their aspect in terms of seeing it from the Bears side, as well as giving their honest review about how our Broncos did. But in case this is your first time or you're welcoming back, welcome back. We have to get down to a couple of things, get them out of the way before we begin today's show. Ladies and gentlemen, first than anything, we'd like to ask you to please show your support for us here on the Orange and Blue Network. Subscribe, share, comment, and like on any and all of your favorite videos here on the network. Also, ladies and gentlemen, this is a joint live stream, so we're also streaming on the MHRT network. So please make sure you subscribe, share, comment, and like on any and all of their videos. The beautiful thing about being on a simulcast and being on two networks at the same time is that in case we're not your cup of tea, well, that's not nice. But there's so much Broncos content all throughout two different networks, enough to get you through the day. So, of course, Libre and I are always down and happy to talk about any and all things Broncos. So please make sure you follow us on our socials. Mine is there at the bottom at a 6'10" Mexican. Bronco Libre is at Bronco Libre 5280. For those of you listening to us on the audio version of this show, please make sure you give us 5-star reviews. Take a screenshot of the said review and send it to us so we can give you a personal shout out here on the show. For any business inquiries, you can email at broncostalk2020@gmail.com. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot finish this segment without saying thanks to the sponsor of today's show, which is Dubby. Ladies and gentlemen, Dubby is formulated for your taste buds' favorite energy drink. As we like to say here on the show, it is all the good stuff without all the bad. So in case you didn't know, Dubby was formulated to give you focus and energy with no jitters or crash. Their formula contains vitamins, amino acids, and nootropics, including the patented neurofactor formula. Basically, it's no calories, no sugar, no maltodextrin, no fillers, and no artificial colors. And to show you guys how nice of a guy Johnny Bakke, one half of the owners here on the Orange and Blue Network, is, him and the guys over at the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast show, which airs every Tuesday here on the network and on MHRT, They want to give you guys a hookup with 10% off when you use the code NRWOB10. Again, that code is NRWOB10 for your 10% off at checkout when you are ready to select all of your favorite flavors that you see on the screen behind this one that I'm covering up, obviously. So big thanks to W for being a continued sponsor for us here on the show and throughout the Orange and Blue Network. And again, ladies and gentlemen, get your 10% off. Use the code NRWOB10. And shout out to the guys over at the Nothing Rhymes With for the free hookup. I think that's a new record, Libre. It's got to be a new record. Oh, you're muted.
You know what? You're right. It's super excited. We're here. The new additions that we have, especially that all these guys that have come into the NFL. How exciting it is for these guys just to be able to put in the effort and be a huge contributors to our team. So I'm super excited for this episode. Talk about these guys and see where we go.
Well, speaking of, we can't get started without bringing our special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, I've known this man for, I can't explain how many, probably 11, 12 years, I want to say. We met at a machine shop when I was a temp there. And, you know, we've been best friends ever since. And we butt heads more than we like. He kicks my ass in Madden every single time and in fantasy. So I'm still, I'm still trying to find a W somewhere in there. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm Broncos welcome to my good friend, Eric Molina. Eric, how are you doing today, my
Hola,
brother?
senor.
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys.
And thanks for being here with us. We were running a little bit late today, ladies and gentlemen. That's why our normal start time did not kick up as it did. So we didn't get to chat all that much backstage. But we did get a couple of comments in here and there as we were getting ready to go live. And it's a good thing I remembered that I have to hit the live button. Otherwise, we'd still be talking about the draft. But as I was telling Libre, you guys have heard me say it all on the show plenty of times. I didn't know full-handedly who the players were that the Broncos picked up until I Googled them right after they were selected. Now, we do have to get to the very first pick, Libre and Eric, which is basically a lot of people, well, most people were hoping that the Broncos would move up, trade up into the earlier selection and get Genty. And unfortunately, he went to the Raiders. So that didn't happen. And then Loveland went to the Bears, who was a guy that the Broncos or that analysts picked for the Broncos to possibly get because they did need another tight end to be in good company with Evan Ingram. And that didn't happen. So then they went and got a cornerback. And to tell you guys, if you guys want to see something funny, go on YouTube and look up Broncos reactions to that. It is hilarious. Okay. And at first, Libre and Eric, I got to tell you, I was kind of surprised. I wasn't expecting them to pick a cornerback. But then I remembered what happened during the season, especially during the late part of the season, when the Broncos only needed to win one game. And we didn't have Riley Moss. In that Browns game, the backup cornerback got completely cooked by Jerry Jeudy, a guy who played like he was CeeDee Lamb in that one game, and then after that game, went completely irrelevant.
Was that the game that he had like 160 yards or something like that? Like it was some insane number.
We can't hear you. Could you turn your mic up a little bit?
Yeah, 1 second. I'm sorry. No, I was just asking. Was that the game that Jerry Jeudy went off for like 160 yards or something like that? Like it was some insane stat line.
Yeah, you still sound low, man.
But yeah, to answer your question, yes. That is and that was also at the beginning when Riley Moss was actually out and so forth. So being able to not have that cornerback at that position or even a backup that was going to come in to even help out, it did hurt us a lot. And Jeudy, and again, it was like he set the record. I think it was over 200 yards maybe, where he set an individual record where he came back to a team for his former team after being traded or whatnot. And I was there that day too. It was a Monday night, and being able to see him do that And everyone, even here in my seats and then everyone around us, were like, where was this at? How come you haven't did this in the 3-4 years that you were here in Denver? Never did anything like that. But you come here the first time coming back into Denver and you do that. We're like, where was that at? Like, that's what we really wanted to know. It's like, we knew that you had that potential, but again, that was the only thing that he was able to do even last year was against us and do that type of numbers as well. So it's frustrating to see a former player that was on your team come back and just do that to you. But then just seeing him after that do nothing, which is like, all right, now we know why we let you go and traded you away.
Yeah, I mean, and then when Riley Moss did come back against that Bengals game, he got cooked by T. Higgins, and you saw the rust in Riley Moss. He wasn't the same player that he was when he got injured, and obviously because see, a lot of people don't understand that when you miss one, even if you miss just one game in the NFL, that's enough to set you back 2, maybe even 3. Okay, there are some exceptions to the rule. There are certain players that don't qualify for that because PS2 did miss 2 games before he came back to the Carolina game. So, but then for other players, if you do miss time like that, then you see it happen. And that's exactly what happened. And also, Moss wasn't like mentally in that game. He was letting T. Higgins have his way with him. If he would have been playing up to caliber or if he would have never been injured, that game may have been a different result. Especially if it probably wouldn't have came down to the wire. So when I thought about all those things and the fact that the Broncos couldn't win one game, it had to go all the way to week 18 where the Chiefs played like they looked like they just grabbed people from the stands to go play. If it wasn't for that, the Broncos were that close to being eliminated from the postseason yet again, just like it was sad last year when the Broncos couldn't beat the Patriots, one of the worst teams in the NFL that season, and they had to sit from the outside looking in. So that the cornerback pick made sense to me. And not just the cornerback, guys, but it was one of the best cornerbacks yet still available for that literally in the middle of the draft. So when you reinforce your secondary and you kind of take away from the injury bug where if somebody does have to miss time, then knowing that you have a good full rotation, especially while our pick kind of gets the the feel of the NFL scene, is a very, very good pick in my opinion.
Are you guys able to hear me a little bit better now?
So much better.
So much better,
Okay.
brother. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. No, yeah, and I mean, just to kind of build upon what you were just saying, like honestly, I feel like he could have gone a little bit earlier than he did. I mean, just kind of going down the line of, you know, when draft picks get picked, they start to show kind of the highlight reel and everything. A lot of the DBs that they were showing, they'd get their stops, but at the same time, it's like they weren't really that lockdown kind of guy. Like they were just kind of playing a few yards off and waiting for the receiver to come to them, or just kind of playing, not really pressing all that much. But Barron was like, he's that guy that's right there on top of you. He's going to press you. He's going to try to put you in the ground. And then, once you get outside, he has that closing speed to catch up to you. So I feel like it was a very solid pick for the Broncos.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things I feel like as well, I was on Thursday, they were talking about him being the number 1 rated cornerback in this draft. Even though you have Travis Hunter, who's that hybrid corner wide receiver, but they had him listed as the number 1. So Barron was the number 1 corner in this draft itself, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, and I mean, you also kind of have to weigh in competition as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got Barron who's went to Texas, and he's playing ranked teams at least half the year.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Travis Hunter, don't get me wrong, I mean, Adon knows that I've been following Travis Hunter since high school, and he is that guy.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, when you weigh competition, is the guy went to Colorado. You're not, I think the toughest games that they had were maybe like TCU very early on. And then, like every once in a very long while, they'd have solid competition. But I mean, it wasn't a, week in and week out, I'm facing a, nationally ranked team with, a top 10 QB and one of the best receiving cores in the country. It's, it just wasn't that.
No, absolutely. And I agree with you with that 100%. But I also feel like with this draft, they really see Travis Hunter as the possibly number one wide receiver going in. But what I feel like and I feel this is what Jacksonville needs to do, use him as a 100% full time corner and then use him
Mhm.
as a part time wide receiver
Yeah,
because that's going to
utility
be
wide
able.
receiver.
Yeah. So if they can do that and utilize him for that, then they're going to be doing him justice on that. One thing that I'm gonna be afraid to, because we play the Jags this year, you know, and we play
That,
him, and that's going to be crazy, and it's going to be here in Denver as well, which is going to be freaking awesome.
yeah.
I'm
And
excited to see
the
that.
fact that the guy played at Colorado, you can't
Yeah,
really say the mile high thing is going to really affect him much
Yeah,
because
not
I
an
mean
advantage.
he's used to the elevation,
exactly, and I'm
and that's
excited
a
for it.
yeah,
So,
and
so
that's a
what do
guy
you
that can hurt you on
what do
both
you think
sides of the
about
ball.
the Loveland pick, Eric? Because I know your initial reaction. I can tell you my cousin's reaction, who's a super Bears fan, and I'm pretty sure he's watching the show right now. If I
Okay,
wish I'd have taken a picture of it, but he literally dragged his hand through his face because the man was so dead set on Will Johnson. Ladies and gentlemen, Will Johnson slid down to the very, very and there he is, speak of the devil.
There he is.
Slid down to the
uh-oh.
I think it was the third round. But the fact that he didn't get Will Johnson, it's a miracle he didn't just get up and walk out of my house.
Well, okay, so obviously knee jerk reaction, didn't like the pick. Um, you have the guy is ranked the number 2 tight end in the draft. Um, if Ryan Poles was so dead set that that was his guy, the Bears probably could have traded down and still gotten him. Because I mean, the Colts took Tyler Warren
Tyler
4 picks
Warren,
later. And that was the only team that was really gunning for a tight end. And I don't think they would have gone with Loveland anyway, just because Tyler Warren is more of a stocky big body kind of guy, whereas Loveland is more of the agile kind of tight end, the route runner kind of George Kittle frame, if you will.
Mhm.
But like I said, knee jerk reaction. I didn't really like it. To be honest, I'm still not extremely fond of it just because, as I said, they could have probably traded down and still gotten them at 19 or 20. But, just kind of looking at the way the Bears drafted over the next couple of rounds, it seems like Ryan Poles really wanted to emphasize offense. And again, as much as the defense kept them in a lot of games, they still needed to address some defensive positions. They still needed edge rushers because all respect to Montez Sweat, but the guy's he's alone out there. But I will say the reason I do like the way the Bears drafted in the first 3 rounds is because you brought in Ben Johnson. You obviously have to give him weapons that he wants.
Mhm.
And to be honest, okay, let's talk about the big story with the Bears, Caleb Williams. I will stand by this statement forever. I don't think he's better than Justin Fields. He's been called a generational talent back, by everyone that's scouted him. He's just a guy. But you draft him number 1, you hope that he's going to win you a Super Bowl. Chances are he might not. But at the same time, year 1, he obviously struggled very much. I don't think he's really used to the speed of the game. I think his biggest shortcoming right now is mental fortitude. When he has a bad play or they have a bad drive offensively, it tends to snowball into, just overall a bad situation. And
Yep.
he doesn't really snap out of it until the defense gets them back in the game.
Mhm.
But by drafting Loveland, by, drafting Luther Burden, which, by the way, I love the Luther Burden pick. I'll say that ahead of time.
Same.
I'll probably dive a little deeper into that later on, but I love the Luther Burden pick. And then you traded, you drafted another tackle, a Boston College tackle. So I feel like that was just kind of Ryan Poles hubris move, but by drafting the way that they did, you're not giving the offense any more excuses. Now it's either put up or shut up. Caleb has to he has to be that mythical 4,000-yard passer that the Bears have been looking for.
Well, I will say, and I said this to you guys before we went live, that I really was hoping that the Broncos would land either Tyler Warren or Loveland, just for the simple fact that, it was going to be another, because the one thing that we've been missing, and not to take anything away from Evan Ingram, but he has been a bit of a traveler in the league so far. So I am really hoping that he finds some success here in Denver. But at the same time, when you have two tight ends, even if one of them is a rookie, but he can bring that danger to the field, kind of like how a lot of people last year underestimated Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers himself took the league by storm. Okay. So either one of these guys, either Loveland or Warren, could be the next Brock Bowers going forward. But it all depends on the scheme that they're playing and the person who's throwing them the ball. Okay. The Raiders have done no good help for Bowers having all these different quarterbacks throw him the ball. So the fact that the Bears and they re-signed Kmet, so they already had a really good tight end who had a really good chemistry with Justin Fields. So I was really surprised that they went the Loveland pick. If anything, I thought they were going to go to Warren and have two different types of tight ends if they were going to go there. Right? Honestly, I thought the Bears were going to either use it on a running back, to trade up and get Genty, or to keep reformatting that line and make it stronger, because Caleb Williams was the most sacked quarterback last year. And we have our good friend here, Dreamweaver, who says, fellas, Caleb Williams better be the guy, because it would be a shame if the Bears waste all these weapons they've accumulated, including Ben Johnson.
He's 100% right on that one right there, because
Cole Kmet is a legit tight end. I'm floored they went Loveland and didn't go tight end in like the third for the fourth. And,
if I can actually speak to that for a second.
Yeah.
So I understand, yes, they gave Cole Kmet a contract, but one thing that has kind of remained a little bit consistent with Ryan Poles is that when he's decided on somebody, he can do one thing while he's in the back scheming a completely different thing. Adon knows this about me. Like, I've never had anything against Caleb Williams. I have everything against how that situation was handled, because, they came into, that season that, Caleb was ready to declare for draft and Justin Fields was on kind of his last legs with the Bears. They, the entire season, Ryan Poles was kind of saying, oh, well, we're giving him the whole season to kind of figure out if he's our guy moving forward. But I was saying that entire season, he's already made his decision about Justin Fields just based on how he's handling personnel. He's not surrounding him with any weapons. He's not, he's letting the guy get killed in the backfield. He'd already made his decision. And instead of trading Justin Fields away while he had value, he essentially ended up losing him for almost nothing, which was a sixth rounder. It was a conditional sixth rounder, with the condition being if Justin played 51% of snaps, it would be a fourth. But we all knew that wasn't going to happen. Ryan Poles just got outsmarted.
Oh yeah.
So I feel like they picked Loveland because Ryan Poles already knows he doesn't want to move forward with Cole Kmet.
So, Libre, my question to you is, if you had to grade the Bears' number one pick, what grade would you give them for picking up Loveland?
For Loveland, I'll give them a B+ on that one for myself. They did a great job and like how you said, Ben Johnson, it wasn't his guy. Like Cole Kmet's not his guy.
Mm-hmm.
So he went and got his guy. So this is what happens with when you get new coaches into these teams and whatnot. And they try to get these guys out, and I can see at the trade deadline for this year, them trying to get rid of Cole Kmet just because of the contract that they'd give him and whatnot. So there's going to be a team that I feel like there will be a team out there that might need a tight end, and Cole Kmet is going to be available to any of those teams that are going to need one. And I feel like that with the Loveland pick itself, is a good pick, because that's something that we've talked about over several of our shows. That was the guy that I wanted as well, because just the way that he plays, the way that he is attacking, the way that he does block. That's one of the big attributes that he has that I don't feel that Cole Kmet can produce here for the Bears.
Yeah,
I'm going to give
Yeah,
you a
well-
B just for the simple fact that I wanted Loveland as a Bronco and you guys stole him from him. So I'm going to be a little
So-
petty on that.
So okay, so if I may grade the pick very quickly, I'd probably give it a C, just because you keep speaking to how he was projected to go to the Broncos because he was a need for them,
Mhm.
but that also speaks
more warning,
to
yeah.
that also kind of speaks to where he should have been drafted. And I mentioned this already, but I do definitely feel like Poles could have traded back and still gotten that guy.
Yeah. And then
Agreed.
before we ask you for your grade about the Broncos, Ivan jumps in. He says, we keep saying Poles drafted Loveland, but that's not the case. BJ picked all the players or had heavy influence to replicate the Lions offense. I just want to say to that, I really do hope he's not trying to replicate the Lions offense, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to be predictable. Okay.
You don't have the Lions players.
Yeah, you don't have the Lions players. If he wanted to replicate the Lions offense, he would have decided to stay in Detroit, and obviously Jared Goff is not Caleb Williams. They are two very, very different types of players. Now, if he wants to run like playbook plays, that I can understand, kind of gadget plays or some of the crazy stuff that he ran when he was in Detroit. But coming to a whole new team, you want to run an entire new playbook, and you want to play to the strengths of your quarterback. Obviously Caleb Williams does not have the type of knowledge yet or seniority in the NFL. He's only in his second year. Jared Goff has been to a Super Bowl, at least. He didn't win, but at least he's been to one. So he knows what it's like being at the top of the mountain, but he also knows when you lose and you fall back down.
He put up 3 points at that Super Bowl, all right?
Yeah. And again, to end my point, I like to think that both coach and GM in each team's war room has a say in it, because most of the time it is the GM that makes the call to the drafted player to say, hey, we're going to pick you, you're going to be a whatever it is. So I really do hope that it's not all Ben Johnson, because if that offense goes to hell, and then there's going to be a finger to blame. I don't know, but that's just my point. Robert Merrick, thank you so much for joining us. But
What's happening?
What's happening? But your grade over the Broncos' first pick, Eric, the one that we talked about earlier.
Honestly, I'd probably give them an A for it. I feel like it was a great value pick. That was a player that should have gone, maybe mid-teens. And it was, I kind of mentioned it before we went live, but I feel like it was a very Sean Payton pick. They are used to having a very, very solid offense, but Sean Payton in general, he's used to having a very solid offense, but the linchpin of New Orleans Saints, Super Bowl run was honestly just a hard hitting defense.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's just a matter if you guys can do things offensively, which it started looking a lot more promising in the second half of the season. But Sean Payton still wants his defense, and I feel like they got great value at their pick.
Yeah. And like I was mentioning earlier before we came live as well, is that Barron was the rated number 1 corner in this draft class. So being him where he fell to number 20 for us, how could you not pick him up? Even though I know like the fans all wanted to say have Omarion Hampton, who was available for us at 20, and I felt like a lot of people were there. But when they called his name, because I thought we were going to get Omarion Hampton as well, but when they called his name, I was not mad. I was actually happy. And I was actually live during TikTok at that point, and I had one of my friends, and she was on at the stadium, because I guess the Broncos did a late push for a watch party at the stadium for the draft. And she was there, and we went live, and just seeing the people there that were in attendance, had no reaction to him because I don't feel like they knew exactly who he was. Because we didn't even have him on our draft board at all because, like you said, like we thought he was going to go in the early teams.
He's supposed to be gone.
They're gone. Yeah. So why would you even have him on your draft board if the projection for you thinking that he was going to be gone already? Why even have him on there? But perfect pick because of the type of what we had troubles with at the end of the season when we didn't have that slot corner position available there when we did have injuries and whatnot. So picking him there, that just solidifies our defense as being the one of the top ones in the league for this year.
Yeah, I'm going to give our pick an A just for the simple fact that, again, the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to pass up when there's a best player available, especially even though he might not be a very like the need that you need. And just kind of highlight this comment where my cousin says, I saw a picture of Hampton next to Harbaugh today. Dude is a monster. Could be a miss for Denver. You could make that same point for everybody that got picked before 20th, especially Genty. So I agree. Hampton could be the next big thing. He might not be. Depends on how that Chargers O-line.
That's a little bit of a vague statement. I mean, could is. I mean, look at all the receivers that got picked before Justin Jefferson. So he could be a monster, but at the end of the day, you can skip a best player available based on need, but not when it's a significantly best player available.
Yeah,
Barron was that guy for us.
And Barron was that guy.
And Barron was that guy. I agree too, because now quarterbacks are going to think twice before they throw into a secondary with PS2 and Hufanga. And I mean, a lot of people are already saying, no fly zone 2.0, which I think is a little bit early to say, but I can definitely see it coming.
That Hufanga
I agree with you.
Was so good, man.
It was so perfect. It was so perfect for us. And that just now tells you, just especially with him being available in free agency and coming and choosing the Broncos, tells you that we are now a destination spot just for what we were able to do last year. And with the little bit of not some of these superstar powers that we have, but what they did. So yeah, I'm super excited for this upcoming season. I was getting text messages all day on Thursday saying, oh no, this is the no fly zone 2.0. And I have to remind people, I was like, you know what? I like the idea of that name, but the thing is, let's pick another name. Because we have the Orange Crush, we have the no fly zone, let's pick another name that's going to be something that's going to be the identifier for this team, not just a 2.0, because we already had that 10 years ago. Let's go on. Let's pick another name. Let's try to figure something out here if we can. Let's try to get that rolling.
Well, I will say that, again, that's why the very first round and even the 2 and the 3rd are so exciting. Because this is the story that a lot of people are going to screenshot, and they're going to come back in October or whenever and say, hey, this guy said it's going to be a bust, and it turned out it wasn't. This guy said he was going to be great. Turns out he wasn't. So it's so exciting, and it's so awesome to see. So let's move on to the second round, gentlemen. And the Broncos, they obviously acquired picks from the Panthers in an exchange, and they traded back all the way to the 60th pick, and the Broncos finally got the running back RJ Harvey out of UCF. Now, obviously, this man is not Hampton and he's not Genty, two very, very talented running backs that went in the first round. However, when you see the tape that man put in his college games in UCF, it kind of reminded me of what we saw in Javonte Williams when we drafted him, where he kind of just seemed like a guy that couldn't be tackled. And I really, really love seeing that. But when you've seen it once, it's kind of takes away from when you see it again. Now, the only thing that I really do hope is that Harvey plays and he doesn't have that type of injury that really limited Javonte. Because before that injury, guys, Javonte was exactly like how he was on the tape. He was a wrecking ball. He was hard to take down. In one game, he had 5 or 6 Ravens on his back before he finally went down. And that type of injury to a running back is really, really, it hurts them a lot more mentally than it does physically, because even if they do heal and come back, they don't seem like that same type of player anymore, which is why
Running
Javonte
scared.
ended up going
Yep.
to Dallas. And I hate to tell Cowboys fans this, but I don't think it's a huge upgrade. I think Jerry Jones bought in something that he probably is going to regret later on down the line. He might be,
Especially when they're here in Denver.
yeah, Javonte is probably be an upgrade over Big Zeke. But
I was just gonna say this is a guy that brought Zeke back after all the cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
So I just
mean,
hope that
Javonte's still an upgrade there.
I just hope, before I turn it over to you guys, I just hope that our offensive line can, or somebody on the staff can get the running game going, because the one thing that we still haven't been able to do is establish a really good running game. And when Bo Nix he's not always going to be able to make fantastic throws, and he's going to make mistakes like those interceptions that we saw. He needs to be able to get a break, and he needs to be able to rely on the running game to get him out of tight spots if need be, And I really do hope that this pick comes back and helps the Broncos running game get back on track.
No, I agree with you with 100% with that. It's going to be for our run game to be really prolific in this league, they're going to have to step it up, and they need to create some holes. We've talked about this before. I feel like they need to go away from the zone blocking itself. If we can get away from that zone blocking and maybe have a pull a guard or a tackle, if we can do that and set that up, not only being able to have these holes opened up, it's going to be awesome and great. But with RJ Harvey, with him, he's been compared to one of the good running backs as well, Darren Sproles. He has the same type of build, same type of, he's the same size as him. What was it, 5'11", 205? But it's going to be his speed and his elusiveness that he's going to be able to get away from some of these defenders and get to the edge. But what I love about him too is that he's a receiving running back as well. So being able to get that out there and get him into the flat and just getting him out there, I think is going to only help out Bo Nix, which we didn't have last year. So having him be able to bring that type of talent to the team is only going to it's already, I feel like our offense has already gotten so much better just from last year. And it's just been adding just a couple of people here and there. And that's what we were missing too last year, especially when you saw that at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. And, just to comment on the whole, this whole conversation, RJ Harvey, I feel like is a good addition. Like Adon says, he looks like he's a guy that, is pretty hard to tackle. Halfbacks are very hit and miss in the later rounds. I mean, you could end up with an absolute superstar in the 4th or 5th round and, have a first round halfback that just is a complete bust. Now, that being said, we, Adon and I in our group, well, not Adon and I, but Ivan actually had a little bit of a running joke in the first 5 or 6 games of the season that Bo Nix is a good running back. And, to be fair, he was QB1 and halfback 1 for most of the season. And that's just like Adon said, because you guys couldn't really get the running game off the ground. And if you really want Bo Nix to be successful, and I'm, just again, historically with Sean Payton, if you want your pass game to be successful, you need that run game to support it. Do you guys have the O-line for it? Probably not right now.
Looking at you, McGlinchey.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really what it's going to come down to, if he's going to be there and actually play and help protect.
Yeah. And, but, on the bright side, to build upon what you said, Bronco, he, RJ Harvey is, he's an elusive back. He can put his shoulder down and try to bowl through some people, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. All of those things are going to be very helpful for Bo Nix. Now it's just a matter of building around what you have, like, getting some motion plays involved, getting some RPOs involved, just kind of having both phases of the offensive game support each other.
What do you think about the Bears 2nd round pick?
So they had 2 2nd-round picks. Again, the first one, Luther Burden, big dub. Luther Burden is a guy that before the college season started was projected to potentially be a top 10 pick in the draft. I mean, he's that talented. Now, I always mess with Adon that they, the whole character issues thing. They mentioned that he might have had some character issues. I always tell Adon, give me all of those guys, because the last guy that had character issues was Micah Parsons and Jalen Carter. And Jalen Carter, like these guys are all pro players. I mean, and I'm really not the type of person to fall for narrative like that. If a player is talented, you give him a chance to prove that he can mature. I feel like, with the Bears having Caleb Williams, and as much as a lot of Bears fans wanted, possibly to trade up for Ashton Janty, you already have DeAndre Swift. And as much as Caleb Williams is important in that offense, the offense really didn't get rolling until DeAndre Swift did. And, just the fact that you have DJ Moore and Roma Dunze, now having Luther Burden, it's like, again, like I said, I like the way they drafted, just because now you're not giving the offense any excuses. Now you have to perform. You have to be that offense that can put up 4 or 5 touchdowns a game.
Mm-hmm.
And against the best defense in the league, you have to be able to put up at least 3 touchdowns a game. You have the weapons for it, and the fact that they rebuilt the offensive line, which I still think Braxton Jones is a question mark on there, but I mean, you have 4 good offensive linemen to support them.
I just like to thank the Bears for taking Joe Tooney out of the AFC West, because I hate that guy.
and for very little as far as trade collateral. I mean, obviously he's a higher end paid offensive lineman, but I mean, it's Joe Tooney. You don't, you get the opportunity to pull the trigger on that guy, you take him.
Yeah, I just hope he's over that Super Bowl, because he might still have some trauma like one,
Oh, maybe he'll be playing with a chip on his shoulder.
I hope so. I will say, before I turn it over to you, Libre, I heard a lot of the analysts saying that Golden, I forget what his full name is, but he went to the Packers, that he was supposedly the best wide receiver pick in the draft, and that the Packers.
Marcus Golden.
Marcus Golden. Yeah. So it's nice to hear some positive, because I've read a couple of draft results and personal opinions, and not a lot of people were high on Luther like you were, Eric. So maybe they're not Bears fans. I don't know, but I just kept hearing the name Golden, steal a draft, best wide receiver, and another weapon for Jordan Love.
So Marcus Golden honestly was another player that kind of slid a little bit. As we were watching the first round go by, they kept saying, okay, Marcus Golden is the best available. And that went on for about, 7 or 8 picks, I want to say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, he slid a little bit himself. I'm a little bit curious as to why, but, I'm a little bit high on the Luther Burden pick, because Adon knows this about me. I'm not really a fan of DJ Moore. And, even more last year, even more after during a game last year, he essentially quit in the middle of a play. I'm not a fan of that mentality. Whether you're winning, whether you're losing, you got to go out there and play the game. And I feel like, this could be another, as Ivan stated in the comments earlier, this could be another Ben Johnson pick. Maybe he's decided, I like Rome. I don't like DJ. Get me another receiver. And, DJ Moore's on the hook for a lot of money over the next couple of years. They might be looking to unload him.
Very much so. And I agree with you as well. And that's sometimes what I was saying about Jerry Jeudy when he was here. You could just see him, because he wasn't either getting the ball, or even though he dropped everyone that he would come his way, didn't matter who was passing it to him, if it was Russ or whoever, just sit him. But it's that type of players, you see their mentality, you see their body language on the field, and that just right there, just for me, myself, why are you even out there? Get out there, ask for a trade, stop showing up, go somewhere else. If you're that disgusted with the team, just leave. And
Squeegee,
I know,
my guy.
yeah, and I just say that they don't do that because they'll get fined.
Yeah, Squeegee, a name we haven't seen here on the show. Thank you so much for stopping by and showing your support. He says, right is fine. It's Braxton Jones, that's the problem. No anchor and gets worked in pass pro. And just before that, my brother mentioned tackle is so important for most quarterbacks. If Darnell Wright can't take the step up needed, it will continue to produce failures on that offense. So it seems that we have a common problem in both of our offensive lines here, Eric. As Libre alluded to earlier, if you can get a guard to pull, even if it's like an outside run or just an inside, and give that running back some room, a spark, let him do his job, then you can clearly get a better understanding of how that running back has that peripheral vision and excuse me, and how he can handle different moments. Can he juke? Can he spin? Can he do this? Can he get that extra yards? And more important, can he protect the ball once he does get caught and go down? Because that's also a very important factor for these rookie running backs going into the offseason into the regular season is ball protection. That's going to be a really, really big point going forward, and to see which one of those running backs has really good ball protection so far, and which one of those is struggling and has to really improve on that mark. But to give a grade on our running back pick, I think for us, I'm going to give it a B. And there's room for improvement on that. But and it's not nothing against Harvey, but I think that he's going to have a lot of work to do because our offensive line is more than likely not going to do him any favors anytime soon unless they get their act together. So I think that he's going to hopefully flourish and be that person that can help take the pressure off of Bo Nix.
No, I agree as well. I give us a B on that pick as well. I like Harvey. I think he's going to do good things, and just overall grade wise, like just surface itself, B. But I do feel like if we do get a line, if the guys, like how you're saying, if they go in there and get their act together, like he is going to flourish within this offense. And again, it's Sean Payton's guy.
You mentioned there was a second round pick, Eric. Before, I'm sorry to interrupt. For the Bears, what did you mention it?
No, just real quick. Just to talk about the Harvey thing. You said that the Broncos traded down in the second draft, in the second round. How far did they trade down?
Originally, they had pick number 51, and then they traded it was like the third time that they traded back. So they went from 51 to 54. And then I think they went to 60. So they went back several times itself to get to that spot.
Okay.
And Harvey was still there.
I was just curious because, like there was, in the top end of the second round, there was still a lot of I would say borderline superstar halfbacks.
Oh yeah.
Not to take anything away from RJ Harvey, but he's that guy that you're hoping will be that guy, but chances are he could be more, slightly above average, middle of the pack kind of halfback.
Oh yeah, like Cam Skettable. Like that's who we talked about. Cam himself. So he went right away. Because he went late, like in the fourth round itself. But talking about just like how you were saying that, yes, there was those running backs that were there early in the third round or in the second round. But the thing is, it's like what happened is that we were at 51. Well, so we were still like 18, 19 back in there. To give up
honestly, that's the only reason I asked, because I just wanted to know if they, had a shot at like a Quinshawn Judkins or that kind of halfback in the first half of the second round. But at 51, you're already kind of out of reach of those guys. I believe they were all already taken. Yeah. So I mean, in that case, like I will agree with you guys as far as giving them a B. Because I mean, if they would have had a shot at like a Quinshawn Judkins and they traded back from that and ended up with RJ Harvey, it's like, okay, now you're looking at B minus C plus kind of range. Yeah. But no, I mean, where they were at, you already lost your shot at those halfbacks. So yeah, RJ Harvey, solid B.
Who was the other second pick that you guys? Was that the offensive tackle you mentioned?
Yes, it was. It was Ozzy Trapilo, offensive tackle from Boston College. I've never heard of this guy.
Me neither.
I think it was a Ryan Poles hubris pick because he was an offensive lineman from Boston College as well. Adon. I think he drafted a guy that plays like him.
The video.
Yeah. Sometimes you feel like that's what they do because you go, I know what I'm capable of doing. So I know what this guy has that potential of doing it because I see him doing that for what I did. So I could see that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I think more than it's a Ryan Poles drafted the guy to be what he thought he could have been. Because I don't know if you know Ryan Poles' playing career, but he never made it off of the Bears practice squad. He never played an official NFL snap in his career.
Oh, wow.
So when I say he drafted a guy that plays like him, that's not a very high ceiling.
Well, I will say that there's like this common misconception that just because somebody played in the league and then they transfer over to, in an office spot, I guess you could say, that they become like this sort of whisperer, kind of like John Elway when he was our GM, that, when he drafted Paxton Lynch, that he was going to be the successor to Peyton Manning. And it couldn't have been anything farther from the truth, And then he tried to recreate the whole Peyton Manning 2.0 with Joe Flacco, and that didn't work. Drew Lock had like a really good year, but it didn't. The Broncos didn't do him any favors by changing out offensive coordinators, and that didn't work. And I mean, it has just been, Teddy Bridgewater. Shoot,
the list goes on, man.
Yeah, the list goes on. And we just got stuck in that quarterback carousel that we thought we had. Russell Wilson. I can't believe I almost forgot that guy's name. It just became like this whole thing where we thought we were out of the quarterback desert, and it brought us right back. So the good thing about going into training camp this year is that the Broncos don't have to worry about a quarterback competition, which I think is still something that the media makes up to stir up controversy. And they don't have to worry about running backs anymore because now we don't have to worry if Javonte's going to play, if he's there mentally. How is he physically? That's no longer our concern. Now, the other two running backs are going to be playing for a running back spot, Estime and McLaughlin. And who knows, maybe they might get another running back undrafted or they might trade for anything can happen in the preseason, So it does leave it open to a little bit of excitement, if I'm being honest with you. But to your question, Eric, I wish I could give that a grade, but unfortunately, I don't know who that guy is. And if you don't know who he is, can he come in and maybe is he going to be like a second round, like a backup to if anybody on your offensive line goes down? Maybe.
Look, and honestly, to kind of go back to what was said in the comments, Braxton Jones being a problem. I 100% agree with that. My only issue with Darnell Wright is that the Bears should have drafted Jalen Carter in that spot.
Oh yeah, I remember that conversation.
Shout out to Ivan. Braxton Jones is still a problem on the offensive line, and I feel like just looking at the Bears over the later rounds, it seems like I think they drafted 2 or 3 more offensive linemen in the rest of the draft. I feel like Ryan Poles is trying to address that other tackle position at value. Because, I mean, you give 4 or 5 guys a camp spot and tell them, okay, whoever performs the best is getting that starting spot. You're going to get some serious competition on the O-line.
Well, I will say for the Luther draft pick, I'll give you guys a B, just for the simple fact that he was slated as one of the good wide receiver picks in that draft, And to be honest with you, Eric, there is a little bit of a crowded room in Chicago in terms of wide receiver. You still have Odunze. Odunze didn't have the best season last year, but then again, how can he when your quarterback is literally being forced to run for his life? Keenan Williams or
Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen, thank you. I don't know what I was going to say. Keenan Allen is still a question mark. A lot of people don't know if
he's gone.
He's gone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Keenan Allen. Yeah, no, Keenan Allen's gone.
Oh, he did. He went back to the Chargers, right?
I'm not sure where he went. Let me Google that really quick.
Right. I thought he went. I know somebody went back. I thought it was Keenan Allen, but I mean, he had his fair share of good throws in Chicago.
Oh, he's still a free agent.
Oh, he's still a free agent. Thank you.
Yeah.
I forget that one game where he had like 3 touchdowns. I think it was against the Packers. But so now you got Adunze, you got Luther, and then
DJ Moore.
And DJ Moore. So can DJ Moore play second fiddle, or is he still wide receiver 1, you think?
I don't think DJ Moore was wide receiver 1 last year.
Adunze was. I feel like Adunze was.
Yeah, I feel like once Caleb and Odunze found that connection, like there was no looking back from there. And once that QB finds his receiver and sticks to him, gives him 10, 15 targets a game, it's going to get dangerous. Now, again, I'm not a fan of DJ Moore. I hope they move on from him. But as far as the Luther Burden pick, I really do like it based on how talented the guy is. But I'll agree with Adon that I'll give it a B because it wasn't necessarily a position of need. I still feel like the Bears really needed another edge rusher. And I would have liked to see them take one in either the first or second round. I mean, just looking further into that first round and seeing the great edge rushers for that went after the Loveland pick, it upset me.
Shai Vargas here, and I think we missed your question the first time. I do apologize. He asked us, what do we think about the tight end the Broncos drafted from Utah, which is tight end Caleb Lohner, who was the 241st pick.
Yep.
So
you know what? The best thing that I love about, before you go on, what I love about his highlights that they showed on ESPN, what were they? Basketball highlights, because he did not really have anything with football itself. But one of the things that I do like, he had 4 receptions in his career there at Utah for football, all 4 of them for touchdowns. So that, he can score. That's what we know. He can definitely score. But again, when you go back and think about tight ends and them being former basketball players, and look at all the great ones. You've had some like Julius Thomas for the Broncos. He was a college basketball player. Just some of the other greats, Antonio Gates, all of these guys that were all former basketball players that transitioned into the NFL as a tight end. I feel like we got a steal at our last pick of the draft. Like, he is also so raw with the game of football. He doesn't know football that much, but once he's in there and he can actually go in there and produce, I hope that this is the steal of the draft and he becomes a Hall of Famer, just off of our highlight film that we have on him.
I have no idea who that player is, unfortunately, so I can't honestly give my thoughts. I will say, though, that at least the Broncos drafted a tight end. If he can find some chemistry and something to go to work with Evan Ingram, then I'm all for it, But even if the Broncos didn't draft one, there may have been a good chance that they would have gotten one undrafted, because there were a lot of players that did get drafted undrafted. Maybe they would have traded for another one. They were going to get another tight end, through hook or crook. But hopefully this does work out, and he does end up to be the real deal here for us in Denver.
Championship run, I agree. I think Jimmy Graham, he's that type of guy.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you said 4 catches total?
4 catches total, and all of them for touchdowns.
Okay, that's the 4 catches being, touchdowns. Awesome. But I mean, I think the Lions have offensive linemen with 4 total touchdowns too.
I agree with you.
it might be more of a product of, they hardly ever threw to this guy. That could just be because there was somebody in front of him on the depth chart. It could be they run heavy offense. I don't know enough about him to make a comment on it, but 4 total catches, it's a little bit alarming, but I wish you guys the best with it.
So I'm just reading his highlights here off of the Denver Broncos app. In 2024, appeared in all 12 games, catching 4 passes, all for which went for touchdowns, as well as a reception for a 2-point conversion. So he had so every time he caught the ball, it was for points.
It was in the end zone.
It was in the end zone. His very first catch, which was his first game ever, snagged a 20-yard touchdown reception versus Southern Utah. So yeah, it's just crazy. He has 2 20-yard touchdown grabs, 1 11-yard, and then during his basketball career, he made a 3-yard. Oh, actually, no, it was not the basketball game. It was against when they played and when it was Utah versus Colorado. He caught a 3-yard touchdown pass versus Colorado.
Hold that thought, guys. I just want to say that it's the end of regulation, which means it's now time for us to go into overtime. For those of you that don't know, the overtime segment of today's show is basically where we can talk about whatever it is that's on our minds. We are still like a little bit halfway through the draft, so I figure we go through the rest of it. I did want to say it might not be in order since we did kind of jump over, but which is fine. The big controversial pick, I would say, Libre and Eric, at least for the Broncos, was the fact that the Broncos drafted a punter at the 216th pick, and a lot of people in Broncos country lost their minds. Jeremy Crawshaw, if you look at his highlights, the way he pins teams back was really crazy. He reminds me a lot of that kicker from Seattle who kind of kicks the ball at an angle, and instead of it spins around like a frisbee, kind of weird. So, I mean, it's been a long time since the Broncos had a really good punter in Denver, so if this guy can keep doing what he's doing and be the real deal and pin teams back and make it easier for our defense to do their job, I'm all for it. But people overreacting like he was the number 1 draft pick off the board, to me, it's laughable.
But you have to remember that we needed a punter as well because we don't have our punter anymore because we didn't re-sign him or whatnot. So they had to do something. Just like when you do your fantasy draft, you're always picking kickers, in your later rounds, round 15, 16, no matter what it is. So I feel like we got a guy instead of trying to pick someone off as a free agency or whatever. Like Sean Payne was like, you know what? Let's just go ahead and get him. He's a guy. And I was just looking at some of his notes here as well, and it looked like he attended the Pro Kick Australia before entering a chance to punt in the United States. So he had to do some things to even be able to play here in the United States with football. So we got an Australian from down under, mate.
Well, I mean, just to comment on that, the Bears drafted Tory Taylor last year in the 4th round, and on another Australian, and he ended up being one of the best players on the team last year. So I hope it works out the same for you guys because Tory Taylor ended up being a very solid pick for the Bears.
Nice.
Yeah, and Championship Run says if you score every drive, you don't need a punter.
So true. That's always I
only see that type of gameplay in Madden. So
I mean, if you turn it over every drive, you don't need a punter either.
Yeah, let's keep in mind, Championship Run, that Bo Nix is going into his 2nd year in the league. So it's nice to be optimistic, but being realistic as well is definitely a key point. And then the other draft pick we had, Libre, or draft picks, I should say, were offensive linebacker Q Robinson, who went in the 4th round, defensive end Savion Jones, who went 101st overall, and Pat Bryant, who was our wide receiver pick in the 3rd round in Illinois, who went 74th. So the one thing that Eric has told me, he told me a long time ago, and I never, I argued with him about it, I didn't agree with it, was when he told me that Cortland Sutton was not a wide receiver number 1. So, at first I didn't want to believe it because, sometimes I let my orange and blue glasses get the best of me. But last year, yes, he had some amazing catches when Russell Wilson was here, but then he also had catches that any wide receiver in training camp in day one should make with their eyes closed, and he bobbled them, every one of them. And like that to me was just kind of like, not only did it hurt, but it made me realize that, yeah, you're not a wide receiver one if you can't make those type of catches. And it wasn't one of those where it was like he turned around to see if he got hit. No, it was one of those straight to the hands, and it either went bobbled up in the air and got intercepted in some cases, or it just fell straight to the ground.
And that's what we were missing.
You can
as
go ahead
well.
and say it, Eric. You were right.
I'm not saying it, but you know what I mean.
But I've been saying this as well for several years as well. I don't think he was ever a wide receiver one either, especially when we had Tim Patrick here. And Tim Patrick I was sad that we let him go and not continue to have him here, because look what he was able to do in Detroit. So that's the type of player that we needed here. Just because he got injured 2 years in a row with us, and now we had Sean Payton. He's like, you know what? We don't need you. And it's only because, like I said, when you get a new coach, they're not your guys. What have you done? You haven't produced over the last several years, so we're just going to let you go. But the problem is that because Cortland Sutton was the main guy here on our offense, he's going against the best cornerbacks against the other team as well. So that's why he was being shut down a lot throughout the season this last year. So, us not having a true, even a true number two, to be able to help him out. They just had all that attention to him. So that's why we didn't see some of those spectacular plays that he had over the last several years, especially the 2 years that he had with Russell Wilson. So, and I feel like that was just a product of our team, and the way that the system was set up as well. Hopefully that we got this in Pat Bryant. Hopefully he can be that guy that will be able to be a number two that's going to be bringing in a little bit more attention, so that Bo has that outlet as well.
I will say, though, that Mims has found his calling in terms more of a special teamer than instead of trying to be that wide receiver number one. So I can't honestly sit here and tell you that Pat Bryant is going to be the wide receiver one for this team for sure. I don't know, to be honest with you, because I don't know a whole lot about him. And it could be another season where the Broncos, try to make do with what they have and not have an actual true wide receiver one, unless they trade for one,
And hopefully that Troy Franklin comes into that role.
Oh, yeah,
as
Troy
well.
Franklin too. Yeah.
So if we can get Troy Franklin to be there, because he was college teammates with Bo, and it just didn't translate to last year. I don't know if it was part of the scheme or if it wasn't translating properly for Troy, because he dropped some of the passes that he should have been able to catch, what he proved the year before while in Oregon. So if he's able to be that number two guy to take off that as well, like that's only going to help out. But I feel like I hope during this time off that they're somewhere on a beach and they're just practicing pass routes and just getting together and working on that. And if they are, they're going to be a combo that's going to be hard to stop.
I know you mentioned this earlier, Eric, and I only want to say this because I know my cousin's watching and he's probably going to get pissed off. You mentioned that Justin Fields was the answer to for the Bears. And the only reason I bring this up is because when we drafted PS2, and a lot of people said, we're upset. I had Justin Fields picked as to be a Bronco, and it didn't happen. The Bears traded up. They moved up and they got him. And I know you were one of probably the only few people I know that were so happy and ecstatic to see Justin Fields being brought to the Bears. So has your stance changed on any of that since then? Do you still feel about Caleb Williams one season after as you did when he first got drafted into the league last year? Okay,
so let me, for one, correct you on what I said earlier. I said Caleb Williams is not better than Justin Fields. I fully stand by that. Now, was Justin Fields the answer? We'll never know. We'll never know because, unfortunately, Ryan Poles came in and had no intention. Yeah, no, Dreamweaver, hit the nail on the head. Fields was absolutely a no-brainer over PS2 at the time. It was Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, QB 1 and 2. And personally, I felt like Justin Fields was the more talented QB, in that draft. Now to say he was the answer for the Bears, like I said, we'll never know, because Poles came in and he already made his decision that he wanted to get rid of everything that Ryan Pace did before him. Justin Fields being part of that. And, while saying he was giving Justin Fields a chance to prove himself, Justin Fields had performances where he quite literally put the team on his back and carried them to victory. And the decision was already still made that was not our guy. So, he didn't give him an offensive line. He gave him one receiver, which was DJ Moore, and nothing else. He didn't give him a running back. I mean, it was a screwed situation from the beginning. Now, as far as my feelings toward Caleb Williams, I mean, again, the guy heavily touted as a generational talent. This guy he's the football messiah or whatever, what have you. He's just a guy. He came in year one and wasn't even in the running for Rookie of the Year. You had Jaden Daniels, who significantly outperformed him, and Bo Nix, who I believe was in the running for Rookie of the Year as well, wasn't he?
Right behind Jaden. He was number 2.
Yep.
So, I mean, when you have the guy that's the number 1 overall pick and this generational talent, you at least expect him to be in the running for Rookie of the Year when the season ends. And we didn't get that. And I think, like I said, he has the talent to be that guy, but he really lacks mental fortitude. He really needs to, stay a little more level-headed and kind of, be that guy like what Tom Brady, when his team would go down, you'd see him on the sideline. He's, sitting at the bench talking to his players and telling them, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get back in the game, and kind of, hyping them up. Whereas Caleb would just kind of find a corner on the bench to sit on by himself. And it's like that's not the leader the team needs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're going to see what happens with year 2. Again, the way you drafted and the way you approach, free agency and, off-season trades, they've equipped him with everything he needs to be successful. Now it's a no excuses situation. If he comes in year 2 and doesn't perform, there's already going to start to be question marks in a very desperate Chicago fan base that, I mean, you guys talk about your QB carousel. Ours goes back 25 years.
That's true.
So I mean, growing up, I remember back when Cade McNown was supposed to be that football messiah for the Bears, and 15 QBs later, we still haven't found our answer. So I mean, it's an organization and a fan base that's starved for QB success. So I feel like, we didn't even live out the completion of Justin Fields' rookie contract. I feel like that leash is just as short for Caleb Williams.
I will say I'm surprised that the Steelers didn't retain his services, because when he signed with Pittsburgh last year, I was under the impression that, Russell Wilson was obviously just a 1-year rental. That was without a shadow of a doubt. But this was going to be inevitably Justin's team, and he did just enough where he showed he had more chemistry with George Pickens than Russell Wilson did. And the fact that they let him walk and go to a team like the Jets, I think that Justin should have stayed put. I know obviously he went to the Jets because they offered him more money than he would have made in Pittsburgh, which is all fine. But he could have been throwing the ball to George Pickens and DK Metcalf. And yes, they're going to struggle with their egos and trying to argue who's wide receiver 1 and all that. But that would have still been a lot more dangerous for most defenses to kind of, counteract. Because right now the Steelers don't have anybody. They don't have. I am not sold on Shaq Thompson and Mason Rudolph. The writing's on the wall that Aaron Rodgers is going to gallop in and be the savior. Probably come the closer we get to training camp. But even so, bringing in an Aaron Rodgers to Pittsburgh is not going to improve their chances drastically. They're literally heading for a meltdown. They're in a worse situation than Cleveland. Cleveland's the opposite. They have too many quarterbacks. So I expect Pittsburgh to go clearance shopping after the third preseason week and, you know, pick whatever's best available. I don't think they're going to trade for one, do the whole thing over again. But I do wish Justin the best in over in the AFC East. It's not going to be easy because now he's in a division with Josh Allen, and that offense is just Josh Allen is something else, you know. And New England with Drake May, I don't see them getting any better anytime soon. And who else is in their division?
Miami,
thank you. And Miami seems to kind of be out on the Tua. And what's going to happen with Tua is still a question mark. So I think that they're all going to be in a race to see who's the worst team by the end of the season.
and I'm surprised that Miami didn't actually pick up one of these higher QBs out there as well.
Mhm.
Just because you never know what's going to end up happening with Tua, because the next concussion he has could potentially end his career. And not to have a good backup plan just in case that might happen, because it's going to end up happening just because of the way that he plays. Like, he just plays so recklessly that it's going to happen. You need to have a good insurance plan itself.
We forgot Zach Wilson is the Dolphin now. That's why they didn't
That's
draft
right.
one. No, they're in
that's
good
right.
hands, man. No, don't worry about it. The Milk Hunter.
Zach Wilson's my guy, man.
Well, I was hoping that we would re-sign him, but yeah, you're right. I think, yeah, and we talked about this as well, that Zach Wilson did go there because of the potential where he'll be playing.
Now, I will say, I knew he was going to say this. You reminded us, for those of you not being able to watch it visually, my cousin said, yes, we know Josh Allen is great. You reminded us how he was 1 yard short from going to the Super Bowl.
That was a first down.
That was a first down. Bills and Eagles Super Bowl would have been a whole lot more entertaining than what we saw. And I'm saying that as somebody who literally loved watching Kansas City get their ass handed to them. Okay.
Yeah.
However, everybody sitting on their couch watching that championship game saw a first down, except for anybody wearing white and black stripes and red. Those are the only people that didn't see a first down.
Yep.
And you can't tell me anything different. Okay. It was
So
just
true.
they didn't want the Bills in the Super Bowl. They wanted to keep feeding this narrative and story of the Chiefs and their three-peat and Taylor Swift and all that jazz. And that just came to blow up in their face beautifully 2 weeks after that. But that should have been Josh Allen in the Super Bowl. I will say, however, you need to be wary that the Bills are getting really, really close to actually going to a Super Bowl. This is the closest they've gotten to since Jim Kelly was the quarterback, okay? And they've lost 4 Super Bowls. They have never won one. They've been to 4, never won. So to say that they're overdue for one is saying a lot. However, they are going to have to try to get past Denver to get there. And we owe them one after we went and got shellacked in the in the wild card round. Shai Vargas here says, do you think we could sweep the Kansas City Chiefs? Eric, I'll let you answer this first before me and Libre do.
No. I mean, at the end of the day, Kansas City still Kansas City. Their receiving core just keeps getting faster. I mean, they as much as everyone wants to discount them every year, they kind of start off the first 4 or 5 games very rocky. Once the weather starts getting a little bit colder, they become the Kansas City Chiefs again. And, you know, regardless of, you know, Travis Kelce starting to get a little older, whatever have you, they're still the Kansas City Chiefs.
I'm going to disagree and say I think we do sweep them. If it wasn't for a block kick, and I will still keep saying this until my last breath, we'd be talking like we already did it, you know. And yes, the Broncos beat their D team or whatever in Week 18. Doesn't matter. Still during regulation, it still counted. So just like their win over us counts, that they won by sheer luck. I think that the Chiefs are going to go in a little bit more rattled than they've been before, because this Super Bowl loss for the Chiefs to me is even worse than the one they had from Tampa Bay. Because at least when they lost to the Buccaneers, they lost to somebody like Tom Brady and Gronk, two guys that have already done that multiple times. Losing to the Eagles, a team that they had beaten once before, almost made it look like easy, and then they came back and they looked like they had never been to the Super Bowl before. Not to mention, they lost a lot of key pieces, Joe Tooney being one of them. That's why they drafted an offensive tackle in the very first round, because they need to redo in terms of rebuilding that offensive line. I think Denver's going to come in a lot more hungrier. And even though we don't have Justin Simmons anymore to kind of pick at Patrick Mahomes like we've been accustomed to these last couple of years when he was in Denver, and I just don't think the Chiefs are going to have another season where they get by streak of luck. Unless they get more help from the refs, then I'm all in agreement. Libre, your thoughts?
I agree with you 100%. I feel that not only with our defense being so much better than we were last year, with us being able to add to the holes that we had, and because we played these guys so well already, we know them so well itself. We know what it's going to take to beat them. Again, like you said, it was just that one field goal that took us away, where we could have been swept them last year. And just the sheer look that they had, they're not going to be able to sustain what they did last year this upcoming year, especially with both us and the Chargers improving so much. I don't think they're going to be able to sustain that type of play this upcoming year for us. And I think really the division is going to be between us and the Chargers this year. And I feel that the KC is going to go down to at least third.
That being said, Adon, I sense a wager coming on. We're going to have to talk about that.
You and DraftKings are definitely going to be handling my business this year. I'll tell you that.
And only collecting at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, only collecting at the end of the day.
That being said, I kind of have to get out of here, but I appreciate you guys having me.
Thank you so much,
this
Eric.
was a lot of fun.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on, brother. It's always a blast.
Thank you. And before I sign off, rest in peace, Mongo.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Rest in peace. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, senor.
Well, you're always welcome to come back
it.
whenever you want, man.
We'll probably check in at some point in the season. Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
Of course. Thank you.
Good luck this year.
Thank you. Go Bears.
The Bears.
Go Broncos.
Yeah, go Broncos too.
All right, now that he's gone, let me talk about him. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
I mean, sometimes I forget that the overtime segment, it doesn't have a time limit,
Right.
But I was about to say, we probably should wrap it up. I will say, over the TikTok thing, I couldn't go on because since I started a new account, you have to be, I think, 50 viewers or 50 followers or 100 or something
like that. I know. I kind of figured that as well, and I actually stopped it as a while ago too. I was like, and right away, because I was talking to them at the beginning, I was like, I go, you know what it is? He got a new TikTok account. I'm not gonna go live because I knew that was gonna be a lot of me just being silent. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna sign off, and then we'll figure it out later. So it's gonna be all right. We'll get you there.
Yeah. Appreciate it. But ladies and gentlemen, we're actually going to head on out of here. Our guest, unfortunately, just couldn't hang on a little bit longer. But I do want to say thank you so much to my best friend, Eric, for coming on here and sitting down and talking to us all about the Bears. I do want to say there are, if you go back into the MHRT archives, there are videos where me and Richie, when Richie was my co-host at the time, where we did interview other Super Bowl fans. Super fans. So I would suggest you go on there, check them out. We did meet somebody from the Sean Moore, who's one of my good friends from the Bengals. We met somebody from the Jets, I believe. We met a Jaguars fan, and there might be somebody I'm missing in that sense. But we're going to redo the whole thing over again, ladies and gentlemen. So I do hope that you enjoyed this segment, this episode. And if you did, please let us know in the comments. And of course, here on the Orange and Blue Network, please subscribe, share, comment, and like on this video, on all the videos that you see. Your support here is greatly appreciated. And as I said, please catch us over on MHRT Network as well. Subscribe, share, comment, and like on any and all of their videos. We have content for everybody. For those of you listening to us on audio after the fact, please give us 5-star reviews, are very well appreciated. Screenshot it, send it to us on our socials on Twitter. Mine is at a 6'10" Mexican. Bronco Libre is at Bronco Libre 5280. For any business inquiries, you can email at broncostalk2020@gmail.com. Shout out to the sponsor of today's show, which was Dubby. Please use the code NRWOB10 to get your 10% off at checkout on all of your favorite Dubby products. Shout out to Johnny Baki and the boys over at the Nothing Rhymes With podcast show, which airs every Tuesday here on the MHRT and Nothing Rhymes With networks for the hookup. I hope you enjoyed today's show. We will be back this Friday for Viva Los Broncos, which is an all Spanish podcast where we're going to replicate everything we talked about today in a different language. Unfortunately, my friend Eric will not be joining us for that show, but Libre and I will be here, and with our Spanglish.
Yeah, our Spanglish.
That seems to be getting better by the day.
Heck yeah.
We will try to talk about all the players we talked about today, and we're probably going to butcher their names horribly trying to say it in a different language. But Libre and I have fun. So that's the important thing.
That's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
If you like it or not, we're having fun.
Yeah. Again, ladies and gentlemen, please let us know in the comments on either of our socials what you guys thought of today's show. We really want to hear you, your opinions and ideas and thoughts. And of course, we will have more fans here on the show before the start of the season to kind of sit down and tell us what really, what life is like outside of the orange and blue, looking out there. So we've already had one perspective of somebody from a Bears fan. I'm trying to get my cousin Ivan, who you just saw in the comments, to come on the show. And he's got a whole different idea about the Bears. He's more of a pro Caleb Williams fan, and why he's probably the savior and all that stuff. So hopefully we can get him for a part 2 of the Bears edition in the future. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to head on out of here. He's Bronco Libre. I'm Adan Diaz. I've already talked too much, but that's just what I do in life. I talk too damn much. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Broncos Talk on the Orange and Blue Network and MHRT Network. We say so long, everybody. And as always, go Broncos!
Go Broncos! Let's go!